What's up, everyone? How you doing? I am KG Kris Gardner, owner and co-founder of the Houston Roundball Review. Welcome to another edition of the Houston Roundball Review presents Let's Talk Houston Rockets. And joining me is one of the young lions covering the Rockets in H-Town, Jackson Gatlin. How are you, sir?
Young Lion. I'm going to add that to my intro over at Locked on Rockets.
Oh, my.
I love that. What's up, KG? Always good to be on the program. Very excited to talk some Houston Rockets basketball with you, man.
Appreciate it. And we already got folks. H-Town's Finest is in with the great message. What's up, folks? How are you doing? Andre, how are you? Solo D'Lo, how are you? Oh, I like this. You're going to like this one if you can't see it. Solo says, Chris and Jackson, name a better duo.
I might be able to name a better duo. How about James Harden and Jalen Green? Yes? No? Maybe? How are we feeling about that?
Not in terms of media.
No. There we go. No, I don't know. We gotta wait for the Harden Green podcast drop, and then we might have some competition, KG.
Yeah, there you go. And Steven Fernandez. Let's go. Jackson Gatlin in the building. Let's go ahead and start discussing this, folks. My man, Chris B. Haynes started it off. I think this is to what you said, Jackson.
Oh, it absolutely is. Rockets fans feel a certain kind of way about this, and I do too. And we're gonna get. I know we're gonna get all into it today.
And I don't. I'm curious to see how many people go the Keith Pompey route from the Philadelphia Inquirer. But first things first. Chris B. Haynes on the 18th, 2 days ago, with this part of info. The bottom part is the thing that's important to me. You see about the money and player option. We all expect James to opt out. But the guard will now be seeking a 4-year contract. Jackson, when you read that, heard about that, what was your reaction?
The language is concerning because if you're the Rockets and you're even remotely entertaining the idea of a James Harden return, a 4-year max contract sounds terrifying. Harden is absolutely still a top 15, top 20 guy in the league, top 3 playmaker. You make the argument for best playmaker in the entire NBA. Absolutely. And I think one of the things that Rockets fans need to understand, right, is this isn't about, bring back James Harden. He's going to be the number 1 guy on a championship contender, right? It would be bring back James Harden and let him be the table setter, let him be the floor general for these young guys, because that's a position of need for this Rockets team, right? They tried for 2 years the Kevin Porter Jr. at point guard experiment. It's had its ups. It's had a lot more downs probably in the grand scheme of things. So this isn't, the worry doesn't need to be, he flamed out in game 7 for the Sixers. The Rockets need to worry about getting back to a situation where game 7s are even on the table in the first place before worrying about how James Harden is as a playoff performer. And that completely disregards the whole, he was actually really good in games 1 and 4 in that series for Philadelphia. But without getting too far off the trail here, I think that if you're looking at bringing James Harden back, a 4-year max contract is not the move, right? It would have to be something on more of a team, a team-friendly contract, a sweetheart deal, if you will. That has to be what you're looking for in a potential James Harden return. But there was also that other line in this article, Chris, about his desire to have basketball freedom.
There we go. There it is. I'll pull that up too.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure we got that in there too. Yeah. The basketball freedom part is the one that scares me the most, KG. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what the hell? That was my comment, my reaction. I sent it to some other friends and they were like, basketball freedom. What does he want? D'Antoni to coach him?
Yeah.
Well, that might happen in Philly. That's not happening here with the Rockets. But yeah, so Rocket fans, digest that, the basketball freedom, and then we'll get into more from the Philly Inquirer. But yeah, basketball.
Well, it's kind of similar, right, KG, to what we heard a few years back when there was the whole scuttlebutt about Russell Westbrook and his desire to go back to playing his style of basketball, his brand of basketball. And he basically, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't have the exact comments on hand, but it boiled down to something where Russ was like, no, I don't want to play, I don't want to sacrifice my touches or sacrifice the way that I play to play winning basketball. I want to play my way, right? And then the Rockets were like, all right, fine. We're going to ship you out to DC then. Have fun over there. And those comments, while not directly direct parallels, it's very similar. James basically saying, I want to play my way. We know that there's been some frustration on his end about maybe, the deferring play style, deferring more to Joel Embiid, which I don't necessarily doesn't make a lot of sense. He's the reigning MVP, right? You should be happy at this stage of your career to have a guy who can handle the burden the way that Embiid does and play second fiddle to him. This is the best scenario for James Harden at this point in his career, I think.
Agreed. And we get more of these comments. I agree with this from Andre in the sense it won't help the youngsters, the growth of the youngsters. Me and Eco talked about this last Saturday about this point right here. 2 years at the most for James. 4 years, just no. Tilman, no. But it's not my team. It's Tilman's team. I'm still convinced that Tilman's going to get this done. But we'll see about it. And A-Town's Finest, if you found out about it, type it in the comments, and then I'll discuss it if what you found out today is accurate. But next, let's see here. We're going to get to the Philadelphia Inquirer comments as well. Got the slide from that. Let's talk about
I would even on that point, KG, it's, you know, there is a very significant personal reason for why James would want to come back to Houston. And it's been, you know, I've known about it for a while now. It's one of those things where it doesn't feel right to report on it, discuss it.
It's already been done, though. It surprised me.
So, yeah, like it's one of those where it's just like it's going to come out and it's going to become much more widespread public knowledge than it is at this point. And maybe that changes the perception of, you know, why people, because there's a lot of people who are like, why would James want to come back to Houston? Why would he want to do this? And it's like, well, like there's a whole story here and it's going to become public at one day. I've just like, I don't want to be the guy that drops the news. Like that's not my place. I'll leave it up to James and his camp to, you know, when they decide they want to like officially share it in a public capacity. So yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about that situation.
Agreed. And A-Town's Finest comment is that is what we've known for a while.
Yeah.
My mentor, Ralph Cooper, I was on his show like a month, maybe 3 weeks ago. And he mentioned it. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh, Ralph said it publicly. So, but it has to do with James's mom's health.
Yeah.
So that is a factor in why a lot of discussion about James coming back. You know, some of the references this week was more and more about family. Mm-hmm. You know, James has family in Houston. So I think some writers were dancing around it a little bit, trying to not get any specifics. But yes, one of the reasons is James' mom is battling cancer. So don't know anything beyond that with type, anything like that. And that's for them to get more specific. But that is one of the reasons that what is it? Where the smoke, there's fire, that the rumors have had legs for such a long time. That's one of the reasons. But that has not changed. Notice we didn't Kelly Eco said 7 out of 10. He didn't say 10 out of 10. So none of that, even with that possible issue, factor in this, does not raise it up to 100% that he's going to come back to the Rockets. Now, if Tilman says 4 years max, I think James would say, oh, well, where do I sign? Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
But 4 years, man. No, that's just too long. Max, no. But let's get into more about draft. So Andre's comment here about Portland. Portland wants help for Dame at 3. So basically, y'all saying we traded Sengun and Jabari +4 for Dame. Who wants that? Nobody's going to do that. I don't. Who brought that up? Did you?
No, yeah. Whoever brought this up, revoke their podcast listening privileges, revoke their YouTube comment privileges, revoke their Twitter account. No. So yes, absolutely. Portland wants
real quick. Here we go.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
I had to find that one. So yeah, go ahead.
Look, Portland absolutely wants help at pick number 3. It was funny. Literally the day after the lottery happened, they sent out an email to season ticket holders with like a photo of Dame, like posing all like, you know, stoically. And they were like, we're really excited about this number 3 pick. It means we're going to be able to get Damian Lillard some like significant help. And the language very much read is like, we're trading this pick. Like,
yeah.
This is the worst kept secret in the NBA at this point, that the Blazers fully intend to run things back with Dame another season, which is the absolute wrong direction. Like if I'm the Blazers organization, I'm blowing things up right now. Like I'm getting a fresh start with pick number 3. I'm finding the highest bidder for Damian Lillard, and I'm restarting the, you know, new era. And potentially you could do it with Scoot Henderson, right? Because it feels like all signs are pointing towards the Charlotte Hornets really liking Brandon Miller at number 2. And that makes a lot of sense. He fits there really well. There are question marks about if they went, you know, best player available was Scoot Henderson at number 2. How do you make Scoot and LaMelo Ball coexist? The issue is internally across the league, there's a lot of front offices that kind of view Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, and Amen Thompson all on more or less the same tier. Like after Wemby, it's just like, all right, there's the next tier of guys.
Right.
And then there's certain evaluators, draft experts that have Brandon Miller as the clear-cut second best prospect in this draft. There's certain people that have Scoot Henderson as the clear-cut number 2 guy. I find myself in that camp. And then there's certain people that point out the fact that Amen Thompson has the highest ceiling of somebody not named Victor Wembanyama in this draft. So there's some exciting potential there. Where the wild card comes into play is the Blazers and trading that number 3 pick. The Rockets could very easily get involved in some type of a deal there, not by sending Jabari or Sengun to the Blazers. No, they would get involved as a third team facilitator. So the Blazers are one team, the Rockets are the second team, and then there's a third team that has that, high caliber, ready to win now impact style player right out of the gate. An example that I've floated recently that I think has some legs and could be really interesting for all 3 parties involved is the Rockets picking up the phone and getting involved with the Brooklyn Nets. And they were rumored to be shopping Mikal Bridges around the trade deadline, trying to see if they could, pick up 4 future first-round draft picks for him. And to me, I feel like this makes almost too much sense because you could send Mikal Bridges to Portland to pair with Damian Lillard, give him an impact, ready-to-win-now type player. The Rockets could walk away with the 3rd overall pick and be able to, assuming Scoot Henderson's still on the board, and draft him there. And then they could send the 4th overall pick as well as any combination of the future Brooklyn Nets draft capital back to Brooklyn, which then gives them the control over their own future. It allows them the opportunity, if they so desire, to bottom out and actually control their draft capital for the next 2-3 years, however much you decide to give back to them in this hypothetical trade. And to me, they're not going to trade Mikal Bridges unless they're really content on bottoming out. He's their best player. And trading him would signal, hey, we're going to be bad. But they can't exactly afford to be bad because they don't have their own draft capital. So it's like this weird catch-22 where unless the Rockets are able to get back involved as a team for a Mikal Bridges trade, either trading him directly to Houston or to a third team, I don't necessarily see them moving on from him at this point.
Your proposal is interesting. I wonder if Dame would be good with that. If, Mikal Bridges being the teammate to be the help that he believes that would help them get better. I don't know. I mean, Dame has a lot of leverage there. He's got $45 million on another year or two. Then before he gets to $60 million for 2 years on the extension, $60 million a year. My goodness, boy.
Yeah, the contract structure is ridiculous. And again, at this point, look, the Blazers have tried time and time again to win with Dame as their guy. And I get it. He's been loyal to the organization. There's always been, rumblings about his, unhappiness or he might want out and this, that, but he's, to his credit, he has stayed loyal, right? He's, made it a point that he wants to win in Portland, all that. And credit to the organization for being willing to stand by their guy and try to run it back yet another time. I just don't see it. And at this point, it feels like almost basketball malpractice to luck into the 3rd overall pick in a draft with some insane talent at the top end and forego this chance to rebuild and kind of reset the clock a little bit when you do have a player like Dame who you could easily, after the season is done, you could explore a trade with, I don't know, you could pair Dame with Jimmy Butler in Miami. You could maybe entertain the idea of trading him to Boston for Jaylen Brown if they decide not to ink Jaylen Brown to his extension. There are a lot of options for where you could trade Dame to and receive a James Harden, Kevin Durant-esque influx of future draft capital and be off to a great start for your rebuild with a future potential franchise type player like a Scoot Henderson or an Amen Thompson. And yet they've completely, it feels like, disregarded this notion. They're like, no. Dame's our guy. We're going to try again with him.
Yep. Let's get into go solo with the if the Rockets draft Amen. Harden would be a good mentor for him. For a 2-year deal for James. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Not 4, but I digress. At 4, Andre says Rockets draft twin. I'm assuming he means Amen Thompson. What position does he play? How does he fit? He's a point guard. Tall point guard. Tallish point guard. He can't shoot, very, very well right now. But he's athletic. combo kind of lead guard. Let's go lead guard. You know, him and Jalen, they'd figure it out. And because
Yeah.
Amen's not a great shooter yet, he'd have the ball in his hands a little bit more. He's a good passer, but he has a lot of things he needs to work on as well. What do you say?
No, absolutely. And I think people, especially in today's NBA, maybe get a little bit more caught up in the idea of, positions, right? The NBA is so positionless today. Basically, you've got ball handlers, you've got wings, and you've got bigs in today's NBA. That's, to me, the better way to look at it rather than point guard, shooting guard, power forward, small forward, whatever. Offensively, if this helps kind of the vision for how it would work, let's pretend your starting lineup is Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Jabari, and Sengun still at the 5. Offensively, Amen Thompson would have the ball in his hands, right? He'd be the table setter. He'd be the guy setting up Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, which would be fantastic because then you actually are able to tap into more of Kevin Porter Jr.'s strengths and his ability to actually play off the ball a bit more as a shooter. That is one of the biggest things that I guess we didn't see this last season was the Rockets with Steven Silas tapping into KPJ and his elite catch and shoot ability. And recently there was an article that was done by Jonathan Fagan of the Houston Chronicle, a little Q&A session with Ime Udoka, where he explicitly mentions having a guy like Kevin Porter Jr., who shot in the high 40s on spot up threes, only took 2 a game. You want to use that, move him around, and have other guys initiate offense to get him those shots. That came off of an answer about utilizing Alperen Sengun's skill sets in his passing offensively, but the same concept applies to an Amen Thompson, who would then take the ball and be likely the primary initiator on offense for the Rockets. And then defensively, this is where it gets interesting. Amen Thompson is like 6'7", 215, 220 right now. He's got a really good physical body for the NBA right now. And he's only going to get bigger, stronger over time as he gets into NBA strength and conditioning programs. He can absolutely guard opposing wings. So offensively, he's your point guard. Defensively, you think of him as your small forward, basically.
How about this? Anthony Black is a better point guard. What do you think? What do you say to that?
Anthony Black might be a better point guard right now, and I think even that's debatable at this point. It's so KG. I don't know how you feel about it. It's so hard to evaluate the Thompson twins because of them playing in OTE.
Oh, agree. Without question.
They're playing as high school kids, right? Their competition. They're playing against sophomores and juniors. It makes it really hard to evaluate them. I think that if you're looking just strictly from, again, I try to look at 3 things when I'm looking at a draft prospect, right? You've got the skill component, which is important, right? Skills. You've got the athleticism component, and then you've got the physicals component. I think that right now, very easily, Amen Thompson clears Anthony Black on the athleticism component and the physicals component. That is not even up for debate. And then you get to the skills component. And again, it's harder to evaluate Amen Thompson because of where he played and OTE and all that. But even the fact that it's comparable on that point and that it could be an argument one way or the other, if you clear in the other 2 categories, then I think he is automatically the better prospect at hand. What
are your thoughts on Cam Whitmore?
I love Cam Whitmore. There was this part of me, Chris, when lottery night happened where obviously if the pick had landed at 6 or 5, I would have been really disappointed. And I was still disappointed that it landed at 4 after my initial disappointment. I settled into a level of cautious optimism, and we can get into more of some of the different stuff that might happen on draft night and my reasons for optimism. But I really like Cam Whitmore, man. I floated a trade the other day of 4 and 20 to Orlando for 6 and 11 in the draft. So you move back a little bit, but you also move up from 20 to 11. Mm-hmm. And I did that because more than likely on the board at that point, you would have your choice between Ausar Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Jarace Walker. There's a lot of different guys that you could get at that 6th spot. But I think Cam Whitmore has a lot of future upside star potential, honestly.
Oh, we got folks here saying, let me go back to my man, Mr. 33 Wins. He loves you, called Mr. Locked On Rockets. From Gohan. Oh, yes. Genius 101. Rockets can't move up, move back, and take Gradey Dick. Wonder how far I'd move back.
Yeah.
Not very far. 9, 10 maybe.
I mean, that's kind of what, like, it's so tough that next range, right? I mean, so much of, it feels like this draft is, right, there's the Wemby tier, then depending on who you talk to, there's the Scoot and or, Brandon Miller tier. Then there's, whoever's left out of that tier. If you have Miller or Scoot over in their own little category, then there's Miller, Thompson, or Scoot, Thompson, whoever you have there. And then it's that next tier where it's like 5 through 12, and they could all go in any order, right? Like, I feel like you could see a team reach and take Gradey Dick somewhere in the 6, 7 range. You could also see him fall past 10, honestly. So I don't know where you would necessarily have to trade back to make sure you get appropriate value to get him. I wouldn't feel amazing if like Gradey Dick was the top selection from this year's draft for the Rockets. Like if you could do the trade that I mentioned a minute ago, if you could get 6 and 11 and Gradey Dick fell to 11, I'd be ecstatic for that, right? You walk away with maybe Ausar Thompson or Cam Whitmore and Gradey Dick. That'd be great. That'd be a total win on draft day.
Let's go ahead and go backwards. This is from Keith Pompey, Philadelphia Inquirer. Second slice coming up, which caught my eye. But Rockets owner Tilman Fertitta loves James Harden. Loves James Harden. I think that's going to be why the 4-year deal will come from Tilman over Rafael, anybody else with common sense. But keep that in mind, fans. Tilman loves James Harden. That top paragraph, third sentence. Fans are past being upset with him for forcing a trade to Brooklyn on January 13th, 2021. Who won here? Watching us right now, me and Jackson. With Rocket fans here are past being upset with James Harden for forcing a trade to Brooklyn. Please type in your comments now. I like saying that. So, are you past it?
I'm past it. I really don't care. Like it's it happened. It sucked when it happened. Absolutely. But that's also the business, right? I mean, the Rockets were at the tail end of an era. You can do all the hand waving and finger pointing and blame assigning you want about why everything ended the way that it did, but what's done is done. And I don't want to say it's like water under the bridge, but would everybody suddenly change their tune if James Harden was willing to come back on a $25 million a year deal instead of a max? Absolutely. Like it's just I feel like we're only up in arms about this because of some of the context around what his potential return would look like. If James Harden said he wanted to come back to Houston on the veteran MLE, everybody in the city would embrace him with open arms.
I wouldn't. If it's 4 years, I just think it's too long.
Well, that's why I said veteran MLE, which is not realistic. But like again, it's about the context of how he would return, right? If his return would hamper the future, then you'd be like, yeah, don't do it. No, terrible decision. But if it's actually a good deal and if it's beneficial, like there's reasons that it makes sense and there's reasons why it has legs at this point.
So correct cuts 88 used to be Brandon. He's still Mr. 33 wins Rocket prediction. He hope he doesn't come back. Mudbone is with you. Mudbone says he's over it. So you're not alone. You're not alone. It's just I'm not sure if
we're just in the minority. It's okay, Mudbone. Yeah. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Correct.
Now, this is not me campaigning for a James Harden return, though. I'm still against it. I'm just saying I try to present the argument as like the understanding as to why is my whole thing. So, and
another Cougar alum, Jerry, not me. I am too petty to forgive that fast.
I respect it. I respect that, Jerry.
And Stephen, James, we aren't good enough. Harden.
Situation is crazy, says, man.
I'm past it, but I don't want him back. Okay. And why citizens know James Harden. Damon didn't like how Harden forced us to trade for Westbrook and then bounce when things didn't work out. We're still paying for that Westbrook trade. Okay. Why citizens coming in from the top rope again? This is a guy still going to Vegas before a playoff game. Is that a mentor? He's not Dennis Rodman.
KG, is it possible? Can we go back to that previous comment? Not the last one, but the one before. I think it was Jamon's comment.
This one?
Yes.
The Westbrook trade?
Yes. Yeah. Is it okay? Can I riff on this for a minute?
Yes, sir.
So the Westbrook trade sucked. There's no other way to I'm just up front. Like it was awful. Easily worst trade in franchise history. Now, I think it's important to unpack some of the context from this trade. there's blame to go around for everybody that was involved in this deal. There's blame to be associated with James Harden, Chris Paul, Tilman Fertitta, Darryl Morey, Mike D'Antoni. All the decision makers, in play for the Rockets at the time deserve blame for this trade. First off, I think that at least in the public court of opinions, Mike D'Antoni does not get nearly enough flack for why this trade ultimately went down. And my understanding of the situation, and again, I wasn't quite on the scene with the Rockets the way that I am now back when this all went down. So, this is, hearing it later. But my understanding of the situation is that Mike D'Antoni was fed up with the dispute, with the frustration, with James and Chris Paul butting heads. And he basically resigned himself to, I'm sick of this. Let's move on from Chris. So he was frustrated with the situation and basically signed off on the deal for Russ. So James wanted Russ because he was fed up with Chris. Then you get the coach who's like, you know what? Fine. Just go get him. I'm sick of this situation. And then you have the owner who comes in, who's still a very brand new owner at this point, right? Has owned the team for less than 2 years. Comes in and he's like, we're going to make this trade happen. And you also have the general manager who is Darryl Morey, the king of analytics, who knows that Russ is a terrible player from an analytics perspective, did not stand his ground and say this is a bad trade. So there's blame to go around for all the parties involved. But I will say that over these last 3 years, the one remaining variable from this trade, right, is Houston Rockets owner Tilman Fertitta. Over these last 3 years, I think that he has earned the benefit of the doubt for now, moving forward, organizationally, that he committed the Rockets to a 3-year rebuild, which was the right direction to go to try and make this team relevant again in the future. What you don't want to be, you don't want to be the Washington Wizards. You don't want to be the old Sacramento Kings, right? Where you're running on the treadmill of mediocrity and you're pseudo competitive and you're getting anywhere from pick 8 to 12 or 14 every year in the draft. And you have no opportunity to acquire top end talent and you are not good enough to actually make, a push in the playoffs. That is NBA purgatory, NBA limbo. You don't want to be there. And
Jackson, it's okay. You can say Detroit Pistons. It's okay. I won't be mad. That's a fact. To the last 3 years.
Okay, fair. I was about to say, well, I thought I kind of envisioned the Pistons on more of the bottom of the scrap heap, but I wasn't even going to give them the. I wasn't even going to give them the credit of the
Blake
Wizards
Griffin
of the
year.
Kings.
He carried them to the playoffs.
That's fair. So, that's fair. I'll give you that. Right, and that was a bad move, right? That was an all-in move for an aging star, a guy who had injuries, and Blake Griffin. Yeah, you don't want to be there. And so I think organizationally, ownership, Tilman, right? He was still very young in his ownership of the team, right? And his desire to be involved in the decision-making process and have his say on, we should do this or we shouldn't do this. He has learned from that experience and he has his team of basketball ops in charge. He has Rafael Stone, Eli Wittes, Patrick Fertitta, who is kind of, operates, as a liaison with the front office and, kind of is heavily involved in the Rockets brain trust, all this. And I say this to say that I think that moving forward, right, it took a lot to commit to a 3-year rebuild. And at no point during all the losing, the 17 wins, the 22 wins, at no point did they hit the emergency break the glass button and make a terrible trade for, an over the hill star. They didn't go out and try and trade for Kyrie Irving when he became available. They didn't go out. They haven't tried to put a Band-Aid fix on this situation yet to this point. And so while I fully agree and believe Tilman Fertitta absolutely does love James Harden, he is not the only decision maker in this process. And he will listen to and value what his basketball operations team tells him. So if they say, hey, you might love James, but it really doesn't make sense for us for long term. This is going to be a bad move a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. It might be great right out the gate. I fully expect him to listen to the guys that he has in charge and not just ham fist the deal through because he wants James Harden back.
I hope you're right, man. He wants phase 2. This is phase 2 with Coach Udoka has begun or is beginning. I mean, James would sell tickets. I'm just afraid. I mean, the freedom part of it, that James wants basketball freedom, he won't get that with Coach Udoka. That won't happen here. I'd be shocked if that happens here. So based on that belief, James is not a good fit here for the Rockets. I hope you're right. Tilman should listen to, he's not a micromanager, especially in basketball. I hope he doesn't get desperate to sell tickets and sign off on a 4-year deal. I'm okay with James here for 2 years for 25, 30 million per. I'm okay with that. 4 years is too much. I wonder, and not putting Rockets aside, what team would give James 4 years and basketball freedom and a lot of money? Who would do that?
I mean, Chris, right now, I think it's basically just between the Rockets and Sixers. The Rockets are the only team out there that has enough money to outright go and get him without making any moves at this current juncture. Because I think the next, I'm going off memory here, I think the team with the most cap space outside of the Rockets is either the Pacers or do the Heat have a bunch of room? No. Maybe I'm going off Andre's comment in the chat. Right. So just of the teams with the available cap space, I know the Pacers are up there, the Charlotte Hornets are there, but without those teams making a move to offload some salary, they could not offer a full-blown full-blown max contract to James Harden out the gate. So it's either the Rockets or the Sixers. And so the discussion for a long time was, oh, well, is Houston just a leverage play? Well, no, it's not just a leverage play. There are some legitimate reasons, as we alluded to earlier and talked about earlier, as to why he would want to return. But Darryl Morey also knows that he's in danger of losing James Harden for nothing and not being able to replace his production. So at this point, Doc Rivers is out. There are some heavy rumors and rumblings about the possibility of Mike D'Antoni stepping into that leadership role in Philadelphia, further turning the 76ers basically into a retrofitted version of the Houston Rockets of old, basically Rockets East Coast, if you will. And my gut tells me that I think he's just going to stay in Philly. I think that they're going to go out and they're going to go get Mike D'Antoni. I think he's going to wind up getting, maybe not a full-blown max, but he's going to get, close enough to, top dollar amount and wind up staying in Philly. And at the end of the day, for an NBA player, you sign the contract and then you could force a trade 6 months later. If he could sign his final big contract with Philly and he could still somehow force his way to Houston if he really, really wanted to further down the line. I think a big part of that is going to be the Rockets not necessarily feeling super comfortable about committing a full-blown max to James. I think that is going to be a hang-up for them. If James rolled up and said, I'd be cool with 25, 30 million a year on a 2 or 3 year deal, they would do it in a heartbeat. I would do it in a heartbeat. I would drive to Bush just like Mark Berman, and I would greet him at baggage claim. Shout out to the legend, Mark Berman, who announced his retirement the other day. Oh man, that was a sad moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It's between Philly and the Rockets at this point. There are no other players to try and get James.
Agreed. And go back to Chris B. Haynes, because the 4-year contract that he says sources say James is looking for. The max money, I really thought, and maybe I'm naive, but based on what we knew and discussed earlier, we're not going to discuss anymore. If you go back to it and read in the on-demand, if you missed it live, that James would come back to Houston for not max. So that's why I was like, really believing James would come back here for not max money, because it's Houston, because of the other factors. But if he's looking for max money in 4 years, hell no. Hell no. Thank you for your time with the Rockets. We will build you a statue when you retire, if that's what you want, whatever. But no, sir, no to max contract, no max dollars, and no 4 years. Thank you very much. Darryl, if you want to do that in Philly, you do you. Go ahead.
And it's also important to note here when we look at, the Haynes article, or anytime there's a report or rumors or, all of this, it's important to consider where it might be coming from. And so historically, Chris Haynes, his connections, his sources, Haynes is a very player-friendly reporter, right? Mm-hmm. So he notoriously kind of built his way up covering Dame with the Blazers, all that. So that leads me to believe that the reporting that Haynes had was probably directly from James's camp itself, right? Whereas you have other guys like Woj tends to be a front office, or sorry, Woj's front office. Sorry, Woj's agents, Shams' front offices. There we go. I got him flipped there for a second. But it's just important to note where the leak might be coming from, right? Where the report might be coming from and who it ultimately benefits in the long run. And this report very clearly to me reads as something that came directly from James's camp, where it's just like, hey, so like, what are the things you're looking for in your next contract? And he's like, well, max money would be cool. Basketball freedom would be cool. Like, and the other point that I don't know if you have this slide up there or not, KG, but in that Haynes article, it also mentioned the idea of if he were to return to Houston, that the roster would need some reconstructing. And that was the other red flag in that article is what you don't want to see is not only do you not want to see the Rockets commit big money to James Harden, 4 years, a max, whatever. You don't want to see that. You also don't want to see them do that and subsequently start moving pieces, trading young pieces, whether it's Jabari or Sengun or Jalen or whoever, to try and get some over the hill, Robin to James Harden's aged Batman. You don't want that situation, right? You don't want to go out and get you don't want to trade Jabari for a Chris Middleton, overnight. Or that would be an absolute catastrophic outcome for this Rockets offseason when so far they're off to a fantastic start with the hire of Ime Udoka. Falling to pick number 4 hurts a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. And they do still have a lot of flexibility and a lot of options with pick number 4. And they've still got the $60+ million in cap space to spend. They're on pace for a fantastic offseason just with the Ime Udoka hire. Please don't walk it back by making a bunch of mistakes in the aftermath of it.
Well put. And I'm sure you agree with me. And I think everybody does. Everybody knows how I feel. The hire of Coach Udoka and just the internal improvement from the current group, I guarantee that the Rockets will win more games this coming season than this past season. That means more than 22. One more time. I guarantee that they're going to win more than 22 games. Okay? That's the baseline. Now you go add veterans within reason, not James beyond 2 years. They're going to increase the number of wins. I'm still not convinced they're going to get to my man's 33, but it would be close depending on who they add. So I think a 10-win improvement, 10 to 12 maybe, is about right. Based on health, of course, obviously, who they bring in, and with Coach Udoka. So I don't see there's not a rush to cut short the window by getting rid of your young core for a quick fix.
And on that note, KG, right? There's the holdup we talked about earlier, right? The Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul trade, and the ramifications for that trade start to come back into play this next season because they were in play for the 2021 draft pick that was, thank goodness, top 4 protected. It came down to a coin flip. The Rockets were able to hold on to the pick, and they drafted Jalen Green. That was the first of 4 picks owed to OKC. And so now the ramifications come back this next season where the Rockets don't own their draft pick, right? And so that is one of the reasons that you hear thrown around a lot for, the Rockets have to be better this next season because you don't want to the pick is gone. Like, I think it is maybe sunk cost fallacy is the wrong, terminology to use here, but the pick to me is gone, right? Mm-hmm. What you do now should not have any bearing on how that pick ultimately turns out for the Thunder. You don't want to, what's the phrase? You don't want to cut your nose just to spite your face. What's that?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, there you go.
Cut off your nose to spite your face.
Thank you. There you go. You don't want to go sign James Harden just to make that pick, pick number 13 in the next draft instead of pick number 5. Like it would suck to convey a really good pick to the Thunder. But at the same time, you still need to worry about what you are building for long-term future success. And maybe James Harden can be a part of that recipe. And I think there are some pathways where he can be. But the points that we've hammered out here, the red flags from the Haynes article, the 4 years on the deal, the max contract structure, restructuring the roster around him, basketball freedom, all 4 of those points, those are massive red flags to any potential James Harden return.
I'm going to answer Andre's question, then going down the rabbit hole with H-Towns for you, specifically for you. We'll both go, chop it up. You too. Expectations for Jabari in year 2. Well, get stronger for sure, and basically continue how we ended this season and carry it forward and be more consistent in his second year in the league. I think he'll be better defensively under Coach Udoka. I think he's going to work on his shot from 3-point range and develop a consistent form on that shot, including the arc on it. Not too many line drives and flat shots and those things. So that's what I expect him to do. And I think having Ime as his head coach will just really unlock more of his potential to help the Rockets ultimately win a lot of games, get to the playoffs. Your thoughts?
I think Jabari is going to come Jabari and Tari both. I think it's worth chiming his name in as well. They are going to absolutely thrive under Udoka, both just on the defensive side and what he's going to be able to do and elevate with them on that end. But then also even just offensively, one of the things that was still kind of jaw-dropping and shocking earlier this basketball season was when we heard in a report from Mark Stein in a discussion with Steven Silas, where he basically very candidly said, yeah, I don't run any plays for Jabari.
Yeah.
And it's like, you hear that and you're like, what? He's the number 3 overall pick and you don't run any plays for him. And I remember I had the chance to ask Steven, I forget if it was before this or after this, but it was, a different occasion. And I asked her, I was like, at Auburn, they used Jabari, off motion a little bit, and they had him coming off screens, and he would, he'd be a kind of a catch and shoot player at times, like where they're, versus just being a spot up, a spot up guy on the perimeter. Like he would actually be used off motion a little bit. And he was like, yeah, I don't think he's ready for that yet. And I was like, well, he did that last year in college. So like, did he regress somehow, like from college to the NBA level? There was just a lot. I think, unfortunately, I think that all the rookies from the class before, Jalen, Sengun, all of them had a rough go of it their rookie year. And I think that Jabari had a rough go of it his rookie year. And I think a big part of that, unfortunately, was due to some mismanagement by Silas. And it's unfortunate. Steven Silas, amazing guy. I hope he has a bounce back, opportunity further down his career, but he just wasn't cut out to be the coach for this group. And I think that Ime Udoka is going to absolutely elevate the play of all these guys, both offensively and defensively. Jabari, I think, is going to take a big leap next year.
Agreed. And before you get to answer H-Town's question, to further indicate differences in coaching philosophy, I think Coach Udoka, I think he said it to Eco as well as Fake, maybe both, about he's not afraid to expose the youngsters to basically his entire playbook. He wants them to learn. He wants them to figure it out. Coach Silas was like he's like 180 of that. He did not want to throw them, in his words, overwhelm them. So, Coach Udoka wants high IQ guys, high basketball IQ guys. He wants them to learn, figure it out, and it's on him to help them figure it out. And so I was like, well, that's a big difference right there. It makes sense to me. So keep that in mind, fans. Your thoughts here. If Harden does come back, how different would the roster look next season? And A-Town's Finest, thank you for your contribution there as well to the channel.
I think I could see it going one of two ways, right? And there's the one way, which is kind of the bad route, and that is you go out and you get James Harden. Let's obviously some of the factors here to consider is how much you're spending on him. If you get him for 30 versus if you get him for 50, that impacts how much other money you have to play around with in free agency. I will say that a third avenue here to consider, because there's avenue one, you sign him to a max deal, 4 years, $50 million, awful. Then there's the team friendly option, 25, 30, 35, somewhere, a discounted deal, if you will. I think there's another option in there where the Rockets, and this could be a dark horse, candidate here. The Sixers could sign and trade James Harden to Houston. And
Agreed.
What that would allow is the Rockets would then maybe send back out some pieces. They would maybe send back out Kevin Porter Jr. as the salary ballast because he's making about $16 million this next season. They could include Jae'Sean Tate, who's making $7 million, right? They basically offload some of this salary And I don't know if we've got, any ravenous KPJ fans who are going to be, calling for my head after suggesting trading him. But what that would allow you to do is it would let you get James Harden, but still free up a good portion of that cap space to then go pursue those other veteran impact pieces. So rather than James Harden by himself eating into that 60 plus million of cap space by outright signing him, if you offload, you could get up to about, I think, the 27.5 million of salary if you send Kevin Porter Jr. and Jae'Sean Tate and maybe a KJ Martin as like a consolation piece back to Philly. Then, if James is signed to, we'll say 40, well, slight discount, not all the way down at 25. We'll say a $40 million sign and trade deal. Let's say 3 years, 120 million or something. At that point, you do the math difference there, 40 to 27.5. That 12.5, you're only losing 12.5 of that 60 plus million in cap space to throw around this offseason. That gives you a lot more wiggle room to do stuff, to pursue possible free agents, to pursue guys like a Cam Johnson or an Austin Reeves or a Brook Lopez, right? Guys who could be immediate impact guys right out of the gate right now. And it also kind of clears up some of the roster confusion as to what do you even do if you go get James Harden and if you still have Kevin Porter Jr. and if you draft an Amen Thompson, like who plays where?
Right.
Like what do you even do? And the issue here is James is not going to play off ball. James is not going to give up his on ball touches to play off ball to a rookie or, playing off ball to Kevin Porter Jr. continuing to play the point guard spot. If James comes back to town, he is going to dominate the basketball when he is on the floor.
Agreed.
And that's not the end of the world because again, he elevates the play for everybody around him. He'll get guys in good spots. You can even look at the 76ers and see how much Tyrese Maxey has flourished playing alongside James Harden. Tyrese Maxey, the moment the 76ers into defensive possession, Maxey is off to the races in transition, and James is always looking for him with those long outlet passes, getting him easy opportunities to attack either just open floor in transition or one-on-one in transition, using his speed to his advantage. You can envision that exact same dynamic with Jalen Green, who is an insane freak athlete, right? Can get out in transition, and once he gets going downhill, it's really tough for anybody to stop him or get in front of him. So I think that depending on which route they would go, whether it's a full-blown max, a sweetheart team-friendly deal, or somewhere maybe in the middle, either by means of just outright signing or, again, potentially that sign-and-trade option, that then opens up what you're able to do with the cap space and the potential free agency signings outside of James Harden. So it's hard to predict what the roster would ultimately look like because there's so many different routes that you could go. But to me, I think that sign and trade option is the most attractive, honestly, because then you preserve the most room of that cap space and you could go get a Brook Lopez and a Cam Johnson, Brook Lopez at 20 million a year and Cam Johnson at say 25 or 27 a year. And then that's a starting caliber small forward and a starting caliber center, whether they come off the bench, whether they have to fight for their role, whatever. And that's actually a somewhat enticing lineup to be able to roll into next season with. And you don't even have to at that point. Maybe you don't start Amen Thompson, right? If you draft him at 4, maybe you take a Cam Whitmore. Maybe you go with a guy who's a bit more of a versatile defensive big with Jarace Walker at 4. I don't know. There's options.
My not only, but biggest issue with that, what if the sign and trade, because I think it probably is on the table. What if it's a 4 years? Does that lend you're a GM, you're a Fel.
Hang on, let me go shave my head.
Does the 4 years give you pause and say, I don't know? And it's 4 years, it's no options, no team options for sure. But 4 years, you got James Harden for the sign and trade.
If it's 4 years and it's 40 million a year, so 4 years, 160, it would give me a lot of pause for concern. If it was lower and it was somewhere around 4 years, 120, so like 30 million a year, I think I'd do it regard. Like if you can get the average annual value down to, again, that 30, 35 range, even if it's a full-blown 4-year deal, because I think what we can, how many more years do you think James Harden has at relatively this level before falling off, Chris?
2.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think he's going to fall off a cliff in year 3? Or do you think he's going to slowly start to decline?
Well, I think he's declining right now.
Well, so, yeah. But do you think
I think cliff is coming after 2 years.
You think the cliff is coming? Okay.
Yep.
So let's say the cliff happens after 2 years. That's where the 4-year part comes into concern, right? Because then you've got you're burdened with this contract for 2 years, whether it's 30 million, 40 million, whatever it is. I will play devil's advocate here for a second and say that anytime you have a sizable contract like this, even if the player suddenly falls off a cliff, like we're worried about happening with James Harden, they're actually in the final year of any of these deals, the contract actually becomes a positive asset when it's on its last legs because it becomes an expiring deal.
Right.
So even, for example, right now, Ben Simmons, who is easily the worst contract in the entire NBA, he's got 2 years left on his deal. If the Nets wanted to make a play and do something this offseason, then yeah, they'd have to pay a premium just to offload that contract because it's the worst contract in the NBA. But starting next season, when he's got
Agreed.
1 year left on his deal, that becomes an expiring deal that could have a lot of benefit for a team that's looking to remove some, basically erase some debt off their cap sheet, or it becomes a salary ballast to include to trade for a distressed asset, right? So if you do sign James Harden to a 4-year deal and it's 30, 40 something million a year, that third year becomes kind of the question mark year, because I think year 4, if you do get to that point, or whatever the final year of the deal is, he actually becomes a bit of a positive asset, even if his on the court production has taken a nosedive, because maybe there's a Luka Doncic who's upset and wants to be traded for. Maybe there's another upset star, max salary kind of guy, and you're going to need money to be able to trade for that guy. And if you've got an expiring contract that's coming off the books, that no future ramifications, that's exactly the type of money that you need to be able to accomplish a trade like that. So it doesn't exactly fix like all the issues if there is like a steep, just decline in year 3, but it is at least something to consider as to like deciding what you would be willing to pay James Harden.
Your logic is sound, sir. Steven says paying James Harden the max to hang around strip clubs in Houston is crazy.
Hey man, they paid John Wall the max to hang out in Miami. Like,
well, I was going to bring that up, so
at least they're saying par for the course.
they paid top dollar for players not to play. They've done it before. So the precedent has been set. So, oh my goodness.
Can they pay us top dollar not to play basketball, Chris? I would gladly pay. You could pay me vet minimum not to play basketball. It'd be cool.
Agreed. I'd be right there with that for sure. Which is why signing Harden back for Philadelphia makes the most sense. Tobias Harris is an expiring contract. It's in Morey's hands because, I've had issues with Darryl on some things, but very rarely does he hang on to mistakes. 1. 2, he rarely allows an asset to go away for nothing. So he's going to do something. Darryl's smart, as he likes to tell us sometimes, but he's already thinking about the contingencies about if James signs, if James doesn't, what will we do? A, B, C. So I think he's prepared for that already. And we'll see how it all plays out. That's Philly's issue. If James comes back to Houston, I'm just going to be consistent with it. I'm good with 2 years. Beyond that,
I think my sweet spot is like a 2. My sweet spot right now, KG, is like a 2+1. Like I think I could live with a 2+1, even if the last year was, say, a player option for the reasons that we just laid out a minute ago. You think, right? 2 years at this at probably this level with maybe a slow decline, slight diminishing returns over time, and then probably a steep drop off in year 3. If that's the case, and you're only committed to 3 years of it, even if he opts in on that final year, he still becomes a positive asset, right? He still becomes a piece that, as the rest of this Rockets young core is kind of blossoming and Jalen Green's coming into his own, Jabari, Sengun, they're all turning into, the NBA players that they're likely, going to be for the rest of their careers. Then you have that trade chip on hand of, hey, we've got a 30, 35, 40 million expiring James Harden contract. You take a look around the NBA landscape and there's evidence every single year. Every year, there are players on the move. There are distressed assets. There are guys who are upset in the situation that they're in. Top level guys who want out of whatever team they're on. And the Rockets could be in position to pounce on one of those guys. And it is worth noting, even though the Rockets owe some of their future draft capital to the Oklahoma City Thunder, things are starting to open back up for their ability to trade picks. You're only allowed to trade picks that are 7 years out. So right now, after this next draft, the Rockets will be eligible up to, I think, 2030 to trade draft picks. And so like slowly but surely, they are now recouping their future draft assets. So if the next star player, let's just say it's Luka for whatever reason. Let's say Luka becomes available a couple years from now and the Rockets are in prime position with an expiring James Harden. Maybe they decide to forego one of their young guys and they want to put together like a KD type package, right? Bunch of future firsts, and they want to get that guy. They could be in position to do that.
I like this line so much from KDC. Hard. I'm going to do this for KDC right there.
Harden is putting young women through college. You got to respect it.
Yeah, I do in that sense. Correct Cuts doesn't, based on where let's see if I missed it already. I think it was right before that. He's not a good role model on or off the floor. Strip clubs and no defense. Well, we shall see. Okay. Give me your thoughts on Jarace Walker as a pro prospect. Not necessarily for the Rockets, but as a pro prospect.
I think he's got a ton of upside. I think the biggest question mark for me is he at the NBA level exclusively a 4-5, or does he have the ability to maybe over time, maybe not right out of the gate, but over time slot in as a 3? I think that changes like the perception on him. I've seen a couple draft guys maybe think, over time he might be, he's got the fluidity. He might have the chops to be able to play positionally 3 through 5. I see some Bam Adebayo upside out of him.
That's my man. I've been saying that for a while.
Yep. Yeah. Like and when you think about that, right? And you think about like even right, like when you go back and look at what the Celtics were able to accomplish with Ime Udoka and Rob Williams being kind of like, at least defensively a poor man's Bam Adebayo. He doesn't have the offensive game that Bam does. But when you look at what Ime Udoka did running the double bigs with Al Horford, Rob Williams, and you even look at the success that Mazzulla had at the end of the 76er series, going back to the double big lineup and that level of comfortability that the Celtics had, I do wonder, like, would they entertain drafting Walker and basically trotting out a front court of Jabari Smith Jr., Walker, and Sengun, and having some of that versatility where, Walker essentially plays kind of that off-ball, roaming big Rob Williams role, and Sengun is basically your Al Horford in this scenario, and then Jabari becomes your Tatum. Like, that could be a really exciting future, and given that Ime Udoka kind of already molded those players one time around, I feel like he could do it again.
That's interesting. I've for a while I said no for him fitting here at the Rockets, but I could see him with Jabari and Alp up front.
Alp's got to be able to shoot, though, is the problem. If Alp can't shoot, it kind of ruins the whole equation. Now, Walker can shoot. He's not like, a lights out shooter, but it's just.
Yeah, I was going to get into that too, because I could see mix and match and Jabari play the 3 on offense.
Yeah.
Some of those 3 guys, he's probably the better shooter, which says a lot right now. That Jabari's the best shooter of the 3 from the outside.
Yeah.
It's a concern. I mean, Jarace 6'6.5" without shoes. So he's 6'8" with shoes because you don't play, without shoes in the NBA. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. So that makes up for the shorter height than some folks, had hoped or would like. Let me say this. I saw not a lot, but practice, UH practice. So I've seen Jarace shoot, knock down 3. I've seen Jarace make more 3s in practice than he did in games.
Do you think he has the ability to be a 3 at the NBA level? Kind of my opening, because that's the thing that I think changes his potential a lot, rather than just being a 4/undersized 5. If he can play on the wing at the NBA level, then I think it changes things.
He's got to tighten up his form. Some basketball folks who I trust and respect believe he could be a 3 in the NBA. His interview with Fagan, the guys he admires and patterns himself, KD, Tatum, those are offensive guys. I think his bag is untapped for the NBA. He didn't play or showcase a lot of his perimeter skills at UH because it wasn't asked of him to do it because of who they had on the team. So I think he could do it. Oddly enough, my biggest issue with him is I read it a bunch. Folks say he's a good finisher around the basket. No, he's not. As athletic as he is, and as strong and as big as he needs to be a better finisher around the rim. Sometimes he just goes up with the little soft floaters and tries to get him straight in the rim rather than going off the backboard. Kids, use backboard. The backboard is your friend. You know, a long time ago, coach told me that, and I'm way older than most of y'all here on the show. That backboard is still your friend. Or just dunk the damn thing. Okay. If he did that more, then I'd be much more sure of him as a strong finisher around the basket. I think his skill set is untapped. Defensively, I think he's going to cause problems for a lot of different opponents. Offensively, I think it depends on what team selects him to allow him to showcase his full skill set.
I will say, thinking about a front court lineup at some point on the court of Tari, Jabari, and Walker. Oh my. Like that would cause so much havoc. 3 guys who can all switch and guard, 3, 4, maybe 5 positions all on the court. That would be the utmost amount of defensive versatility you could ever imagine, on an NBA front court.
Agreed. In that scenario, I'm changing almost here on the show because for a while I didn't believe he'd be a good fit here for the Rockets, but now I'm kind of warming up to it because of the coach. Udoka, I think, would make everything work and maximize the skill sets of all the guys who we've discussed. Tari, Jabari, Alp, and Jarace. That could be fun to watch.
I think it's a reach taking him at 4, though.
Agreed.
The problem.
That's
where you get into the issue. Is like if the Rockets took Jarace at 4, people would be looking at Houston the same way they looked at Toronto taking Scotty Barnes over Jalen Suggs. And that, to be fair, it sort of worked out for Toronto. But the issue with them and that selection was like certain players are going to be more ready right out of the gate than others from the NBA draft. And I don't know where Jarace fits into that mold of like if he's closer to, what am I trying to say? If he's closer to his potential ceiling right now than some other guys, like we talked about, Amen Thompson earlier, his ceiling is sky high, right? Highest ceiling outside of anybody not named Victor in this draft. Amen is nowhere near his ceiling right now. And that's the hope is I think when you're trying to get a guy at the top of the draft, you want as many bites at the apple as possible for a superstar. And I don't know if that's the right move necessarily to make with pick 4. If you were further down and if he was the best player available, you make the pick and you feel really good about it. But reaching at pick 4 might not be the move.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't, I've seen for a while folks have Jarace top 5. I'm not wavering on. I do not believe he's a top 5 pick. I believe he has a lot of potential and upside, but I think it'd make more sense 6 through 10. Okay. I'm okay with that. Hell, 7 through 10, even a little bit lower. But for the Rockets at 4, no. Rockets move down some. Yes.
I just do not want to see him fall. Just please let him be off the board before OKC picks, because he would be an insane fit for the Thunder in their front court next to Chet Holmgren. Like that would be almost the ideal complementary player to throw next to Chet right out of the gate. And I do not want to see OKC get even better after this last season.
And that would just add to the defensive versatility as, oh my goodness gracious. Yeah. So, but that's food for thought. We'll hear how he does in workouts and interviews with other teams. I think he's still probably going to fall past 5. We'll see. How, I think Fagan reported he's going to interview with the Rockets if he hasn't already. But at 4 for Jarace, no.
But I don't think he makes it past. I don't think he makes it past 9 for the Jazz. He definitely doesn't make it past 10 for the Mavericks. If he's there at 10 for the Mavs, they're taking him immediately. But I could see the Jazz wanting to take him and pairing him with Why am I blanking on big man's name? I wanted him last year so bad, and I'm blanking on his name. Center out of Auburn.
Walker
Help
Kessler.
me out. There you go, Kessler. Thank you. I'm pairing him with Kessler in the front court would be an insane defensive one too.
Yeah.
And then for the Pacers as well, being able to throw him in the front court over there. I don't see him making it past those teams.
And because this has been asked before, I apologize for missing it. Taylor Hendricks at 4, too high. I like his upside as well, but too high. too high at 4. He's taller without shoes than Jarace. He's not as big. He's like 30 pounds lighter than Jarace, which is a concern because the Rockets have a lot of lightweights up front. Don't want to add to that, really, if you can avoid it. He's more, in my opinion, better suited now as a 3-4 for the NBA than Jarace is. I think Jarace, even because of 6'6.5" without shoes, and like I said to everybody, 6'8" in shoes. Okay, let's keep that in mind. Add an 1.5 inches to anything without shoes because guys playing with like 2 pairs of socks and the tennis shoes. So just keep that in mind. Okay, at least 2 pairs for the ankles. So, but Taylor's taller, but Jarace has longer arms. So it all balances out a little bit there. Both of them are pretty good shot blockers too.
And to me, KG, I think wingspan and like standing reach matters more than just your outright height, right? Like you can look at a guy like Draymond, who is 6'5", listed at 6'5", but he's an insane defender because of his crazy wingspan. You look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's listed at 6'1", and he's playing the 2, but he's actually a decent defender because one, he's built maybe not quite like a full-blown linebacker, but he's got like a good, strong body, and he's also got the wingspan on top of it. So he holds his own defensively and has actually decided to buy into defense this past year with the Cavaliers, his best defensive performance as a pro so far. But wingspan to me is much more important than just your flat-out height, honestly.
Agreed. Let's kind of run through some of these other comments and questions. Other Cougar, Marcus Sasser, shot great this week in Chicago Combine and one-on-ones and agent workouts and those things. I think John Hollander has him in his top 20 for a draft, on his big board. I think 18, I think I did it from Tuesday or last Saturday. That's about the highest I've seen Marcus. I've seen Marcus anywhere from like 18 to
like 18 to like mid, like late 30s, mid 30s. Yeah. Like it feels like he could go, either way. It's tough. And you see the same argument being used against Scoot Henderson is, the NBA is trending towards the jumbo sized point guards these days, right? The jumbo sized players. And it's tough to envision, Marcus Sasser as like a long-term future starting point guard prospect for a team at 6'1". He brings a lot to the table, and it's not that there's not still a role for him in today's NBA. I just don't know if at pick 20, I feel like there's going to be better, more enticing prospects on the board. And keep in mind, the Rockets also still have TyTy Washington waiting in the wings, who did not get anywhere near as much run as I thought he should have gotten this past season. And to draft yet another point guard prospect, and then to maybe also bring James Harden home, and then to also maybe take Amen Thompson, the Rockets are going to have, go from no point guards on the roster to trying to squeeze minutes for 5 different point guards on the roster.
Are TyTy and J Gup going to be cut? They cut it, traded.
Traded, traded, possibly not cut. Yeah.
And comment about Dereck Lively, big man, can shoot. I think he's got a slow release. He's a shot blocker right now. He's going to get drafted because of his shot blocking. That's if I think he can shoot some, that's good. That's nice to have that in your back pocket. But right now, young man, you protect the rim.
I wish Barlow hadn't put out that video or put out that tweet of him getting shots up, because I really hope that Dereck, he is my number one guy that I'd love for the Rockets to get at 20 if he's there. I don't think he makes it there though. I think he's going to go in the lottery at this point.
He's going to be going probably 10 to 13, that kind of range. But I think asked this earlier, getting to it now. I think we discussed this.
Yeah.
If Rockets get Amen, yes, Scoot would be the 3. Yeah.
He would, and again, he would be your 3 in the, it's tough.
In terms of offense, in terms of shooting and the type of shots.
But I also think based on a lot of the comments that we've seen out of Udoka, and if you go back and look at some of how he ran the Celtics, he didn't have a de facto point guard with that team, right? He had guy, basically they play made by committee, right? They, Al Horford would play make a little bit. He tasked Tatum and Brown with becoming better playmakers. He leaned on Marcus Smart. He didn't have a de facto go-to table setting guard. And maybe that changes his approach a little bit if you have a guy like an Amen Thompson to give the ball to and say, hey, you're, an amazing, floor, or no, I don't want to call him a floor general at this point, right? But and you've got good court vision, you can collapse a defense. Like, that's what we're going to lean on, is we're going to lean on you doing what you do best and driving and kicking out to guys like Jalen and KPJ, who then can attack a scrambled defense, it plays to their strengths. I think that the issue with Kevin for the better part of 2 years has been he's a really great dynamic guard. There's a lot of redundancy in his skill set and Jalen's skill sets at this point. But if you take both of them and move them off ball and then put a guy who is a better shot creator, distributor, guy who can collapse the defense and make the right reads out to those guys, and then those guys can attack after that initial action, that's when I think they're going to be at their best. So I also don't necessarily know if I see it as just exclusively like, okay, Amen Thompson's going to have the ball and he's going to have like a 35% usage rate setting up the table for everybody else. I think we would see a much more diversified offense where Kevin play makes a little bit, Jalen play makes a little bit, Amen play makes a little bit, or Sengun play makes a little bit, like kind of playmaking by committee, using everybody's strengths rather than it just being one guy who holds the ball for a majority of the possession and tries to set something up.
You've answered this before earlier in the show, but again, your thoughts on Anthony Black?
Yeah, I mean, it just good prospect. We were talking about, the comparison between him and Thompson. Somebody said that, Black's a better point guard right now. I think if you make that argument from the skill perspective, sure. And I think there is still an argument to be had. I'm not confident saying one way or the other right now who is the better point guard out of the gate between him or Amen, but Amen clears him as far as the physicals and as far as the athleticism is concerned. And if he absolutely trumps him on those two other categories, and it's even an argument on the skills category, then you have to go Amen Thompson.
How about this from Andre? You want to trade for Cat and put Sengun on the bench?
Can you do the X again?
Yeah, 1 second. There you go.
To me, I have like Karl Anthony Towns. There are a few guys in the NBA that I watch them play and I just get so frustrated with them. And I'm going to use like the inverse of like that, when you see a guy and you're like, oh, he's got that dog in him, right? Cat has negative dog in him. Like he brings the overall level of like dog mentality on your team down. And I also view Rudy Gobert as that same type of player. So adding them both to the same team just completely destroyed the T-Wolves. Like, I do not want Karl Anthony Towns anywhere near the Houston Rockets. Please do not go get him. Yeah, he's soft.
Yeah. Roosh might get Roosh. I don't know Roosh as in long-term conversations, but who knows? I might get more guests on. Eco as well. He's about to get real busy the closer we get to the draft.
I know Roosh. If you want Roosh, let me know. I'll put you guys in touch.
We could do that. I got no problems learning from other people and getting them on the show. Wise Citizens mentioned Kris Murray. Just typed lively we need, but Dereck's going to be gone way before it. Rockets might have to move up to get him if they're so high on him. They'd have to move up from 20 to get him for sure on that.
And it's worth noting, while I do have my like ideal targets at 20, and we all should, right? I really don't think the Rockets are going to wind up making that pick. I think they're probably going to trade that pick out. Or if there is some world where they do wind up packaging some stuff together, trying to trade up to 2 or 3 to acquire, the guy that they view in their eyes as the guy, maybe it's Scoot Henderson, whatever. I think that could very easily be involved in that package, or they just trade it out and trade for a future, a future asset in some capacity. I did a mock draft the other day where I traded pick 20 for a future like protected pick from the Knicks because I just wanted the asset to remain liquid. It's like when you drive a car off the lot, right? It depreciates in value 35%. You make that pick at pick 20, you're drafting an unproven rookie, and then you limit your possibilities, exponentially by making that selection rather than just kicking the can a little bit further down the road and having that flexibility of including it in a trade somewhere down the line.
And let me put this up. Andre, I know it wasn't your idea, And the first one that got the X wasn't your idea, but you tossed him out there, so we're shooting him down. So, if you want to continue tossing out other folks' ideas or other rumors, that's on you. But doesn't mean we're Xing you. We're Xing your idea and your trade proposal. That's all. It's all good here on the show. No worries there. Let's see. Oh yeah, I know Jackson Richard Pot. I know that for sure. Marcus Sasser with the 20th. Let me say this, and I mean this with no shade. Almost prior to today, almost everybody on here said the Rockets should trade the 20th pick. Almost everybody said they should or will trade the 20th pick. Now tonight, Marcus Sasser at 20, Dereck Lively at 20. Folks, what's changed? I think the odds are it's most likely the Rockets will trade the 20th pick. They're not keeping that pick for themselves. So I thought all of y'all agreed on that for almost the entire season. And now, May 20th, a lot of y'all are saying, oh, we're going to get Rockets to draft so-and-so at 20th pick. Hold up. Nothing's changed.
Because it's just they've drafted 7 first-round picks in the last 2 years. They're going to, if they don't trade out of pick number 4, which there's a very small list of players that I'd be willing to trade the number 4 pick for, I'd entertain the idea of a Mikal Bridges. I'd entertain the idea of Jaylen Brown if he doesn't ink that extension with Boston and use the number 4 as a centerpiece for a trade for him, possibly. But outside of those two guys, there's really not many other names that I consider trading that pick for. So you're going to get another top prospect likely with number 4, whether it's Amen Thompson or you trade up or trade back, whatever. You don't have enough runway for these guys. You don't have enough minutes to give out to these guys. I think we can look at, there's 7 guys of those 7 first round picks. There's 4 of them that are guaranteed rotation minutes, right? It's Jalen, Sengun, Tari, and Jabari are your 4 that are going to get minutes. Then there's another 3 with Josh Christopher, Usman Garuba, and TyTy Washington that aren't necessarily like left out in the weeds. It's just a lot more uncertain about where do you get those guys their minutes. And that's not even factoring in. You've got to include another top prospect who, whether they bring Amen Thompson in and he's like starting right out of the gate, or maybe they bring him along a bit more slowly, like the Pacers did with Benedict Mathurin, bringing him off the bench, that kind of situation. I think both have merits, or both approaches have merit, but you just have a limited amount of space to be able to accomplish developing these guys and also potentially bringing back in those veteran pieces that we know that the front office has spoken about a lot, about adding the veteran talent, using the $60 million in cap space. And at some point you can't keep collecting assets. If you had a guy that you were really excited about with pick 20, again, if Dereck Lively somehow fell to pick 20, then yeah, you draft him and you tuck him at the end of the bench, or you send him down to the G League and let him get reps that way. But I think it's a far more likely conclusion that they're going to trade it.
And Mr. Trent, Mr. Cougar fan here, he was part of the show on Thursday with Coach Sampson. And he said it there, and he's saying it again. Rockets need Quentin Grimes.
I wanted Quentin so bad with either of the Josh Christopher or Garuba picks. Now I will say I was very excited about the Garuba pick because I had done a podcast with Rafael Barlow maybe a month or so before the draft that year, and he hyped me up on both Sengun and on Garuba. And so having we'd done a whole episode, we did like a segment each talking about those guys, their strengths, their weaknesses. So I was actually really excited with the Sengun pick, and I was excited for Garuba. But man, watching what Quentin Grimes turned into at the NBA level, it's like maybe you do take the gamble on Marcus Sasser at pick 20. The Cougars kids can hoop.
See, the thing is, wow, I'm not sure what the time frame was or the calendar, but Kelvin Sampson had a media session in June. I don't know, might have been the first summer practices had begun for the team to begin off-season work. Something might have been that. And he just happened to mention that Coach Tibbs loved Quentin Grimes. I might have been right after, right after the draft, whatever. It was around that time. It was in June. And we were like, it only takes one because Grimes was not really, majority of folks had him early second round. And then we heard Coach Sampson say, "Well, I know one team really likes Quentin Grimes." That's what it was. He didn't say who it was until after the pick.
He's
That's what
exactly
it was.
like he
That's
is
what it was.
he is such a Tibbs player. Like I feel like we should
Yeah.
have been able to see that from a mile away. Like right from the Sampson tree to the Tibbs tree. It just makes such perfect sense.
So after the fact, it was like, just I thought that's what you said right there. It's like, well, duh, that makes perfect sense. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. So I wonder if someone will think of Marcus Sasser that way late in the first round. Get to say, he's a Coach Sampson kid, man, and he can shoot. He's got that toughness. He can play defense. We'll make it work, kind of thing. Who knows? So that's possible as well. I could just see Marcus Sasser coming off the bench consistently and being a rotation player for a long time.
I think Sasser's going to have an immediate like day one impact wherever he goes. He's gonna make good decisions out of the gate. He takes care of the basketball. He can shoot. He plays hard nosed defense. He is exactly the type of guy that you would love to get. Again, with a flyer early in the second round, late first round pick, could help a bunch of teams right away. That's just for the Rockets and kind of where they're at, right? Sasser would make sense on like a playoff team, like right now.
Yeah.
He could go to a playoff team and get 10 to 15 minutes a night, 10 to 20 minutes a night, backup point guard off the bench, and you'd feel confident in what he was doing. There, some hiccups here and there, but that's also the benefit of getting an older player, somebody who's a bit more ready-made rather than drafting these 18, 19-year-olds who are unproven, who really don't know who they are as players yet.
And I think Kris Murray might benefit from that, being an older player, and plus his brother's success as well. He might benefit second round and just say, Kris, this team, playoff team, you don't have to do much, but when we call upon you, we trust you. You got it, coach. That kind of player, I think he could thrive in a role like that for a winning, successful team, a team that doesn't need him to play, all the time, 20 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So,
and I really do think there is something to be said, right? For less burden, less expectations being placed on these young guys if they're able to be brought along a little bit more slowly rather than just thrown into the deep end of, hey, you're a top 5 pick, go out there and start and you're getting 30 plus minutes a night. It's like that can be a bit like deer in headlights. You hit the rookie wall at some point, right? You're going to have your ups and your downs. You're exposed to, way more reps right out of the gate. But when you're in a position like that, like Sasser will likely be with whatever team gets him, being able to be brought along a bit more slowly like that, having, a clearly defined role where it's just, hey, you're getting these minutes every night, make the most of these minutes when you're on the court. I think that kind of help can have a different way, or is a different way to grow players, but has its merit as well.
This is an interesting comparison. Marcus will be Desmond Bane right out of the gate. And then Mr. Cougar, even better than Desmond. Pump your brakes, folks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, where are we? I'm confused. Like, where are we getting? Because are we talking just like from the shooting perspective? Are we talking their impact? Because they play different positions is the first thing that I'm like kind of.
Yeah, because Desmond's not a point guard.
Yeah.
Marcus, he's going to have to play point guard, run the offense, or be paired with a taller point guard.
Yeah, he almost from like the Patrick Beverly school, right? Where like Pat Bev's not the point guard that you want setting the table for your offense. Jose Alvarado, same type of, like, you don't want, like, those are not guys that you give the rock to and say, hey, go orchestrate the offense, right? Go run some beautiful sets. No, they're out there to be, pests on the defensive end, to make an impact there, to hustle, to make some winning plays. And offensively, they do that. They take care of the ball. They do their job right. They hit spot up shots, right? They make the right reads on the floor, but you need to pair those types of guys with a dynamic creator elsewhere on the floor, whether it's your 2, your 3, your 4, or your 5.
Yep. And Terry from New Zealand. Marcus is in this year's draft, of course. Where was it? Marcus is better. See, his Cougar glasses are shining through now. Marcus is better than Keontae George.
Yeah, that's definitely some red. Those are some red tinted shades going on there.
Yeah, I mean, Keontae George, that's an upside. Who's got a higher ceiling? Keontae George, not Marcus Sasser. And I'm okay with that. That's one reason a good number of NBA teams draft for ceiling rather than immediate need, veteran, older player who can contribute right now. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay, my man, we're going to wrap it up these last 4 minutes. What's on your brain? What do you want to talk about as we wind it down?
you know, I was first off, no, you know what I want to talk about, KG. Victor Wembanyama going from the potential savior of the Houston Rockets organization
To a villain?
to public enemy number one, to the villain in less than 24 hours was one of the most insane heel turns of the past decade. To see him, and look, I get it. You know, we see the video, the behind the scenes of him reacting to all the picks, and I fully understand that his reaction to the Rockets going forth was much more about him wanting the Spurs than it was about not liking the Rockets. But the way that it looks and the way that it feels and the way that this entire season has gone with the Rockets taking so many strays from players and national media and all this, to then see Victor sitting there with his friends and family and the Rockets pick gets called at 4 and he looks over on the side and he's, yeah, like, that was so unnecessary, and he made an enemy for life out of Rockets fans everywhere. And that also adds more fuel to the fire as to what I would love for the Rockets to somehow scoop Scoot Henderson, because you know that Scoot is always going to have a massive chip on his shoulder because Victor's going to go number 1 overall. So add to the former rivalry, right? It's back, it's stronger, and it's going to be stronger than it ever was between the Spurs and the Rockets. Having this feud be brought back to like new life being breathed into this feud over the last, week or so has been a ton of fun. And then, so there's that, the Victor stuff. And then my other thing is just, I know that the Rockets didn't get Wemby. It stings a little bit. I know they didn't even land number 2 so that you would have your choice of the next prospects, but whoever the Rockets get it for, they're getting a great prospect, whether it's Miller, whether it's Amen, whether it's Scoot Henderson. They're going to walk away with a fantastic prospect. And that doesn't even include the idea that they might be able to trade up to guarantee whoever they want out of this next group of 3 guys. I just think the Rockets are in a really great spot moving forward. Like, I have the most optimism about this team, KG, that I've had in the last 3.5 years organizationally, about the direction that they're headed, the right moves being made. They've got the right guy in charge now with Ime Udoka. And like you pointed out earlier, I think that regardless of, even if they had gotten Wemby number 1, or even if they got James Harden on a $20 million a year deal, in free agency, I think the most important acquisition that they made this offseason was signing the right next head coach. And to me, Ime Udoka is a top 5 head coach. And the fact that the Rockets were able to get him is huge.
I'm going to be petty. It's petty. Messy. When I saw the Wemby clip, I had the thought, I wonder if he's doing that because he heard the Rockets are going to get James. And he does not want to play with James Harden. Just putting it out there, So I don't know that. I haven't spoken to Wemby. Who knows if I ever will. I probably will at some point in his career. But I just had that thought because prior to that, there was just more and more discussion, hell, in print from national media about James Harden's coming back to Houston.
Yeah, it went into overdrive right before the lottery happened.
So, I was like, that's weird. So I just had that thought when I saw the clip, and I was like, well, maybe he doesn't want to play with James Harden. Hey, we don't know that, and he's going to deny it anyway. But we'll see.
It's okay. The Rockets dodged a bullet by not having to select Baguette Bol number 1 overall. So
yeah, we got Cam Whitmore. Jackson and I both like him a lot.
Yeah. I don't know if I like him right at, like, number 4 might be a slight reach for Whitmore, but I do like him. I like him a lot. I think if the Rockets were going to target Whitmore, I would like to see them trade back to get him, because I feel like you could easily trade back to probably 6 or 7 and get him, depending on what your draft intel is telling you about what other teams want to do. And that's the interesting spot about being in number 4, is you don't want to reach and take a guy that you could get at like 6 or 7 or 8 and just take him at 4 because you like him, because then that's malpractice, because you can acquire an additional asset for trading back and still getting the guy that you want, but getting, additional assets, in addition to that. So it's a tricky position to be in. All I know is that Rafael Stone has a lot of work cut out for him this offseason moving forward and into the draft.
And I'm going to put this up from Steven, and then we'll wrap it up. I just saw the score. I think the series ended in game 2, and Lakers lost that lead. I think it's over. So Nuggets up 7 right now, last I saw. Real quick, wrapping it up. LeBron missing layups. He's got butterfingers for hands now all of a sudden. Father Time is like, knock, 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 LeBron.
Not my goat. No, look, it's fine. Look, it feels weird, right, KG? Because like, I mean, I can't speak for everybody in the chat. Like, I've never known an NBA that didn't have, like, I mean, I started watching basketball when I was probably about 5, 6, so I remember like the Steve Francis's rookie year, like vaguely, but like I didn't really start like understanding the NBA and stuff until a few years later. And so I've never known an NBA that didn't have LeBron James in it, right? It's always been LeBron. And he has been this dominant force for over 20 years now. And so to see Father Time start to finally take hold of LeBron it's weird. It's like seeing your heroes, your idols, like, they're mortal, right? He's a human just like us. Like, it's kind of crazy.
And I'll wrap it up because, I'm, I think, twice your age. And I think I've told this story on a older version of Let's Talk Houston Rockets. I saw LeBron. I first saw him play in a tournament in Pearland. He was going to his senior year in high school. The hype around it, there was already an article about SI LeBron, the next one, the chosen one, whatever the hell the title of the article, the headliner of the cover was. So the hype surrounding him coming to the area was massive. And I had colleagues saying, I remember Mark Berman, tied it all together. Mark Berman, he this is how long ago this was, Jackson. This was pagers.
Pager era. Man.
Okay. So Berman, I think this, I was still at the radio station. Berman said, hey, because the guy who was doing the promotion for the game, the tournament, kind of shaky reputation, so a lot of folks doubted that LeBron be there. So Berman said, hey, if LeBron, as soon as you see LeBron in the parking lot, you hit me up. I said, okay. So I like ran to the payphone, whatever. He's here. Jackson, he's the best player I've seen in person in my life. I was 17, 18 years old. I mean, the control that he had, the gym was packed with coaches, kids, fans, parents, because he wanted to see who everybody was talking about. If the hype is real. And he lived up to it. He was in so much control. Hendrick Perkins was a teammate. This was like the Oakland assault or whatever the hell. This is back when AAU had no rules, basically. Because he had Leon Poe from California was on the team. Kendrick Perkins from Beaumont was on the team. Some kid from Houston was on the team. It's like a national team for AAU. So this is before they changed you got to be within like 100 miles or whatever. For 50, whatever. But it was just, he was so damn impressive that I called one of my road dogs when I got home. I've seen Jesus. That's what I said. That's what I said. Because it was so impressive to me. And that was Friday night. So Saturday morning, because they played like the last game Friday night and then the first game Saturday. So I picked him up, and the gym at that point, nothing coaches, college coaches, who couldn't make it Friday night. And they were just there to see LeBron and hope he got injured. To go to college because they knew he was going pro. It was like no chance in hell he was. But they were just like, I just want to see him play. That's what it was. The most impressive performance I've seen in person in all my years for a teenager in all my years of covering basketball. So wrapping it up, Jackson Gatlin, again, thank you very much for taking time to talk hoops with me here on Let's Talk Houston Rockets. How can folks find you and follow you and talk to you on social media?
Always a pleasure to join the program, KG. You guys can track me down on the Bird app at JT Gatlin. Of course, I do Locked on Rockets 5 days a week. Got tons of coverage for the draft and all the possibilities moving forward for the Rockets over there. And we're always firing up different, live discussions, our Rockets watch rooms we do with Dave Hardesty and Roosh Williams. So be on the lookout for those. And I'm doing my first I've done a few hits every so often with KHOU 11, talking Rockets basketball with them on their Sunday Night Sports Extra. I'll be in person for the first time tomorrow night. I'm going straight to the studio, so that should be a ton of fun. So be on the lookout for that. Probably tomorrow night, I don't know, 10, 10:30, 11, whenever they air the Sports Extra show. So yeah, should be a ton of fun.
I don't know. Well, you tell me, because I mean, it might be changed because you're going in person. So they're going to do it live. They're not going to record it.
I don't know. Maybe they are going to do it live. Maybe I'm going to be live on camera. That'll be fun.
Because
so we'll see.
They've done it. They recorded it the times I've been fortunate enough to be on there. So it was always around 6:30, 7 o'clock for the recording, and then showed it at 10:35, whatever it is. But if they do it live, and that'd be cool. Of course, you're younger than me. You can stay up late. I can't. But as always, see, awesome show. Shout out to Jackson. Shine there from New Zealand, because Terry is in New Zealand. Right here, H-Town's finest. Awesome show. Please bring Jackson back, KG. So I guess I have to bring you back, man. I guess I don't mind doing that.
I'm glad that I haven't overstayed my welcome through these last two shows.
No worries at all. Respect to Jackson. Real good convos. That's what we do, folks. I'm gonna toss out some pride. That's what Cougars do. That's what UH people do. We know hoops. We know sports. And we help each other out. And see, also here, Mr. Another Coug right there. And Jerry's a Coug as well. So thank you very much, Jackson. Once again, thank you to everybody. JB, Allen, H-Town's finest, Solo, KDC, Andre, Jerry, everybody else for chiming in and your comments. Appreciate it. Don't be shy. We're doing a Folks Talking Sports show tomorrow, Sunday evening. Me, Andy Yanez, another Cougar alum, and Willie Gibson, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, Folks Talking Sports. And of course, the Thursday show on the lunch break, live from noon to 1 on YouTube as well as on Roku. So everybody, as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for your support, and see you soon. Take care. Peace.